Hello, my name is James Trailie, also known as James_Films. You may know me from my 3D renders over on Instagram that I build. They're these dreamscapes that blend reality and fiction to create these relaxing oases. Each one's a different challenge, and I'm always trying to design these oases to transport you, the viewer, into this relaxing dream world. I've been making these for the past couple years, and I use a variety of different software to bring these to life, including most frequently Blender and Unreal Engine, but also a bit of Cinema 4D in the mix as well. And outside of that, actually for my main job, my 9 to 5, I work for NASA. I create documentary films about our amazing science missions, missions to the moon, missions to Mars, even missions beyond our solar system, doing some really cool science at the boundaries of the solar system. So some really fun stuff. And with all of that, we actually have created a number of animations and visualizations using real spacecraft data to design things like asteroids in 3D using real spacecraft imagery. We did a project in Unreal Engine where we took a bunch of real data from our spacecraft OSIRIS-REx that actually sampled this asteroid Bennu. And we brought this into Unreal Engine and built out this environment that allowed you, the viewer, to stand on the surface as if you were right where our spacecraft collected a sample, brought this beautiful imagery to life. But today, what I'm going to be doing, I'm actually partnering up with NVIDIA, who have graciously sent me 2 of their GeForce RTX 4090s to build my own computer and use it with kind of a standard workflow that I would do for something for NASA, but also for one of my own projects, using something called OpenUSD. And if you're not familiar with this, this is a link from NVIDIA here, where it kind of describes a bit about this file extension. This is Universal Scene Description, or USD. It's an open and extensible ecosystem for 3D worlds. You can use this, as it says here, it's more than just a file format. It's a really great way to kind of collaborate across different 3D software. So, invented by Pixar Animation Studio, you see here. What we do for my projects is obviously design things across a number of different software. We'll model things in Blender, texture them over in Substance Painter or something like that, and then bring all of our files over into Unreal Engine and actually animate our scenes there. And typically you might use something like a .obj or a .fbx file format, but these don't always play typically very well across file formats. And one other thing that's really fantastic about OpenUSD is that you can actually make changes to the file in the original software, and those changes will actually update when you save across software. So say I'm modeling something in Blender, maybe I change the texture, or maybe I add a light into my scene that I've had saved out as a USD and brought into Unreal Engine. Once you commit those changes, you'll actually see those reflected in Unreal Engine. It's just a very responsive way of doing these kinds of things and a lot of fun. So first of all, I wanted to talk about the build that I actually put together with the help of NVIDIA here. I consulted with them as I was kind of picking out all the parts, and I really wanted to make something that would be, for me, a dream machine as well. This is something that I could use really for any project and just have it absolutely shred with anything. I mean, already working with the 2 GPUs gives me some serious processing power, but on top of that, I've really worked to build out kind of a work of art too. I really love how this PC came together. I do have some Strimer in there giving some kind of funky effects to it, and a lot of fans because I do need quite a bit of airflow to cool this system off. This is very intensive, very render intensive, especially when I'm using both GPUs to render, but the temps have been very cool with this for the most part. A liquid cooling solution that is from NZXT. It's got that kind of fun screen. I've put the NASA meatball you can see on there, our famous logo for our agency. We got the 2 really cool GeForce RTX 4090s that you see stacked on top of each other, and I had to go with a pretty big case in order to fit all of these in. My old PC build was a mid-tower. It was a Corsair 4000X case. This one still works very well for me. I use this as part of my render farm at home. And I've got a Quadro RTX 4500 GPU in there, also from NVIDIA, that's been a workhorse for a lot of my projects as well. So, all right, so let me just show you a quick benchmark of just the insane ability of this setup here that I've got with the GPUs. I'm going to be using the classroom scene from Blender. This has quite a few other benchmarks, so you can kind of compare the results again just to see what's working on. If you don't know where this one is, you can navigate to the blender.org download page. It's in their demo files. You just got to scroll down a little bit to the cycles section. This is a nice classic scene, and it's been updated for newer versions of Blender, which I am using 4.2 for this one. So I'm over here in rendered mode, and first of all, just to make sure that I'm using my GPUs, you can go to Edit, preferences, and then system tab, and you can see in the optics, I've got the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4090, two of them enabled. I've checked both of these on. You can also see my CPUs listed here, but I'm just going to stick with just the GPUs for my Cycles render device. Let me close out of that. In my render settings, render properties tab, you can see I've checked on denoise optics in the viewport here, and I also have it set for my render. I'll be working off 300 samples for this one, so we'll just see how this works. Let me just switch this back to solid view, and we'll hit render. And so this will render actually in real time. I don't need to speed this up at all. So I will talk through this. This took just under 6 seconds, 5.85 seconds to render. With the optics denoising, you can see it looks pretty good. Now, before I dive into a tutorial for the USD file format and my typical workflow for Blender to Unreal Engine and compositing a scene, putting everything together, I wanted to just talk about just purely a Blender specific scene, what a typical workflow would look like, and how it's really changed and been a lot faster now that I've been using the dual GPU setup here. So this is a pretty heavy scene, particle wise. I've got a bunch of leaves and all kinds of grass and stuff scattered in this scene. And what becomes immediately very challenging with a scene like this is you're often fighting through a lot of noise. It takes a while to update and refresh, and then when you're kind of orbiting around, it's just very laggy and hard for you to kind of get a feel for how your scene looks. I am not struggling with those problems anymore. And comparing back to my experience how it was before working off my old gaming laptop a number of years ago to now, it's night and day. It's really been just so much quicker now that this has been the setup that I'm working with. So for a scene like this, for example, here I've got this water and I've actually scattered particles on it using an add-on called GeoScatter here. It just helps me have some really good control of exactly where I paint things on. So I've painted these leaves in to be on the water here as if they've kind of fallen from the trees and plant life above. This scene also is a tricky one to render just because of the lighting situation. It's a very dark scene. You got this big archway kind of taking up most of the scene, blocking out a lot of light. So there are a lot of other light sources that have been placed in this scene. For example, a couple different point lights at different points, like this one close to the foreground of your camera. A couple other ones to illuminate the archways further down, even some fireflies and things in there to add a little bit of extra detail. And then you also have this very strong underwater light. You can see this demonstrated right here. These could also cause some issues as you're rendering because obviously you have a lot more light bounces with a lot of different light sources. There's also volumetrics in here too. You can see I've got this volume object that I've added in here to give the feeling of these God rays coming into, which can also very quickly become very noisy. I actually am only rendering this at around 200 samples, or exactly 200 samples. With optics denoising checked on, I do usually a little extra denoise pass over in After Effects once I'm done compositing everything together. But honestly, out of Blender, it already looks really good. I can show you the raw version of what this looks like, just exported or rendered out of Blender, and then the final color corrected and composited version once I'm over in After Effects. And this is usually very subtle changes that I'm making at this point. I'm just adding in a little bit of lumetri color just for some levels adjustments and things like that. And then sometimes just a very subtle denoise pass to over top. And yeah, this is what the scene looks like. This is, again, just a purely Blender workflow. For this one, obviously, I'm staying in the software. I don't need to use USD for something like this. But in the next part of the series, I'm going to actually walk through designing a scene in Blender, building out some of the architecture, texturing a little bit, maybe even adding in some lighting. And then we're going to talk about bringing that over into Unreal Engine to do the finishing touches and actually make a final scene out of it.